Okay, geographers, we are back to do some more geoprocessing. And again, this term, geoprocessing, simply means we take some GIS data and we are manipulating it or augmenting it or doing something to derive some kind of information. Right? We're trying to answer a spatial problem, and we're getting at that answer by getting into the data, looking for relationships, looking for anomalies, weird things, whatever it might be. Okay, so that's the plan. Now, the last time, for last week's exercise, I had you commit a crime, effectively with GIS, figuring out where to hide a dead body. This time, like I feel terrible about making you do such horrible things. So this time, we are going to be proper law-abiding citizens, and once again, we're going to look at crime data and do something within that realm. But we're gonna be the cops this time, right? We're crime fighters. We're Batman. However you want to think about that. We're going to use spatial data to get at some answers. Yeah, I feel much better about being a good person in this regard. That said, it's not going to be straight criminal justice type analysis here. I'm going to complain and poke and prod a little bit, and I'm going to do so because well, it's in my nature, and the whole idea of critiquing what we do, it's part of what we do. So I can't just leave it alone. And well, let me explain. To prepare for this, to try to get something that would connect to the criminal justice majors that I often have in these classes, that I would read through some GIS for crime analysis type textbooks and look at tutorials and get some ideas of what is it that people who study this are really doing. So I read through some of them, and to be perfectly honest, I found some of them to be problematic in how simple they are and the way they use spatial data to try to figure out why crimes are happening or where problematic areas are, and yet at the same time, they don't appear to be really questioning their methods, the data themselves, and that kind of stuff. So instead of me taking something from one of these books and just, well, let's be honest, just stealing it, repurposing it to put my name on it, but make it look like I came up with it and all that stuff, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be that blatant in terms of ripping something off. Instead, we're going to tweak it a little bit, update it a little bit, but also kind of go through and see really how you would do this analysis. That's one thing, and I'll get into that. But also question, should we be doing this type of analysis? Is it the best way to get at our answers, right? So that's it. Good news is we're going to be doing this crime analysis stuff with real data, somewhat topical data here, depending on how often I reuse this assignment and even this video. I won't lie to you. But as of right now, super relevant, super cutting edge. When it's the year 2042 and I'm still using this, maybe not so much, but we'll worry about that then. Okay, so we're gonna have that. It's gonna be good. The bad news, though, is that we're not necessarily going to get answers with this, and that's something I want you to be aware of. Is that not all GIS work, not all of this geoprocessing, rather, not all of that is perfect, and it doesn't always work, and we don't always get wonderful, simple, concrete answers. All right, which is going to be the case here, but stick with me on this. It's for a good cause. It's to instill this skepticism and critical thinking and all of that in you, so that when you're going out and doing your own GIS work, you're asking these questions and trying to make stuff work. Okay, all right, that's enough preamble here. So the original tutorial was looking. I think it was based. I want to say it's Pittsburgh is where the crime data were based, and they'd go through and in each chapter they would talk about. And I'm sorry, I can't remember which book. I looked at a few of these, but they would go through and talk about different things you could do to study crime in an area, and they had a bunch of Pittsburgh data or wherever it was to focus on this. And so one thing I was looking at, they were looking at crimes in, and effectively it seems like it was the poor part of town. And then, so where the crimes are taking place, and then the location of bars in the area. And what you're supposed to do is go through and see that, yes, crime occurs where we have bars, and let's figure out the most problematic bar. Now, yeah, I didn't quite like this. Mainly, having been someone of relatively low income who enjoyed a night out at a bar or three, or whatever. Like it seems like some profiling, right, against some people who just want to have a good time. So I questioned the validity there, but it was also so simple and cut and dry. I thought, no, we're gonna test it, but we're gonna get some real data here. So we are looking at West Hollywood, just outside of Los Angeles itself. We're going to look at actual crime data from the LA Sheriff's Department website. So we'll bring that in. We'll look at bars in the area, but we're going to look at some other stuff and get at that. And I selected West Hollywood because they are dealing with this explosion in crime in 2021. So I forget what the exact number is, but a huge increase in crimes. And looking at some LA County data, I mean, it's clear. There's a lot of stuff happening here in West Hollywood at this specific point in time. So we're going to look at 2021 crime data for this specific area. We'll look at the bars. We'll see what's going on, but we'll take it further. Okay? Okay. All right. So that's the goal here. Now, number one, we have some issues. Before I even start clicking on this stuff, and what you can do, I guess I should say this so you know exactly what we're doing here. This is in Canvas. It's the what is it? I think it's Weho Crime. So Weho West Hollywood, the clever little nickname or whatever. Let's do. In fact, let me go here to double check because I don't even remember. Right here. Bear with me 1 second. No, let me do folders. And here, there we go. Yes, Weho_crime.gdb. So you can find that in Canvas as you've been doing with all this other stuff. Okay, that's where I got the data and the feature classes that we see here. And I've gone through and I've cleaned it up a little bit so it's a little more aesthetically pleasing. You're welcome to do that as well. And so what you'll see is we go through here. I have the sheriff's station in West Hollywood marked right there. And we'll use this for reference later. In fact, for now, I'm just going to turn that off. So we're going to bring a lot of different layers in here. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff. I don't want to have extraneous things, but that'll be useful later. This cams_address lines, these are, if it's not obvious, these are streets throughout LA County, right? If I, let's see, zoom out, you can see it's a very massive file here, and I could have clipped it, made it smaller for you, but I thought, you know what, I'll give you guys all of this stuff. We may have downloaded this before with other stuff, I can't remember, but it's a very useful feature class, and we'll get into why it's useful and how you can use it and all that. So that one's pretty big and unwieldy. I then, to help kind of make some of this stuff smaller, I took the boundaries of West Hollywood itself. So that's this blue entity here. These are the West Hollywood limits. All right, so we've got that to see what we're dealing with here. And then also, turn this one off. In fact, let me just turn that off. We also have this Weho block group This is census data. And so within here, if I open the attribute table, okay, we've got all this same kind of stuff that we've been using for some different exercises, but this is down at the block level, right? So the population from the 2020 census just itself per square mile for that density. Got some racial background, sex, age, that kind of stuff. Just different things for mapping, for figuring out some different demographic information for an area. And so I clipped this one to West Hollywood itself. And what we'll do real quick is right click here. We'll go to symbology. And instead of single symbol, I want to do graduated colors. We'll leave it at natural breaks and 5. I'm going to get rid of this aggressive color scheme. I want something a little softer here. This green, that's better. Not as aggressive. And in terms of the field, I want to do not just population, but let's do with the square per square mile. Okay, to really get that sense of density and what's happening in an area. Where do people live within West Hollywood? That is still in there, and if we put the roads over there, we can kind of get a sense of what we're looking at. Okay, and also to give you a sense of and what you can do. So if it makes, let's just do it, and then I'll turn it off here. But it helps. I mean, we could turn on the names in this roads layer, but that can get unwieldy. What's kind of nice if you're working in an area and you're not entirely sure of what you're looking at, where you are, go ahead and add one of these base maps, right? To get a sense of where you are. All right, we can just do this streets one. And I'll turn this off. And so, well, I guess this is a little problematic here. In fact, what we'll do, let's do this. Click on this Weho block group. Go to appearance, and for transparency, let's just try like 40%. All right, so we can still kind of see where we have our higher density and all of that, but we can also see the roads themselves. All right, so Santa Monica Boulevard, Sunset Boulevard, get the general idea of what we're dealing with. All right, okay, so there's our spot right here, and I'm gonna now turn that off, so we don't need that. I'm going to turn this off as well, because we don't need it right now. We're going to go back to this. And in fact, I'm going to hit save. I'm just working on this crime project here. You call it whatever you want. So I hit save there. Okay, so we've got this. There's our general area, our existing feature classes. And then what we also have, if you've been paying attention and you added everything over, you'll see that we have 4 standalone tables. Okay, so we have our crimes from 2021 for all of LA County right there. And then we also have these bars, churches, and daycare tables. And we'll get into each of those and see what we're going to do with that stuff. And let's see, let me make sure I've been writing notes. I'm making this up as I go. So I'm taking notes to make sure I don't forget anything with this stuff. But yeah, I think we're good there. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to actually check out our crime data, right? And map this stuff out. And I think we did effectively the same thing, maybe even the same file with last week's exercise. No harm in doing this again. So we're going to go down here to this part 1 and 2 crimes, right click on it. And in fact, before we do it, let me do this. Let's open up the attribute table to look at this. So in here, you got a whole host of information. I don't know if we actually explored this last time at all, if we did in fact use one of these for our crime data. But we've got a handful of useful and relevant fields in here. The date in which the thing was reported, the date in which it happened, as well as the time, which that's kind of useful. Unfortunately, though, what's a problem is that the date and the time are in the same field, right? Which makes it difficult to, like if I just wanted to look at crimes that are happening in the morning versus in the evening or, late at night or something like that, it gets tricky to run the queries and actually pull out that information because there's extra stuff crammed in here. So you'll get this when you're working with data that you did not in fact create, someone else did. Sometimes you have a great idea. You want to be able to do something, you can't easily do it. And also, unfortunately, with something like this, you can see we're dealing with over 140,000 different crimes in here, right? So going through here and removing this, making a new field, typing stuff in, gonna take forever. So just, again, something to think about. We can explore through here and see what we can do, what we can't do, and think about all of that. So there's the date category. That's, of course, relevant to get a sense of, what exactly is happening. All right, but then here we have the address, okay, itself. And then it's also broken down. Let me, hold on, come on, mouse. You can see, so like this one, 3600 Imperial Highway, Linwood, California, it's all together. But then we have it here broken down street, okay, so just that Imperial Highway. The city itself, Linwood. There's no zip code for this one for whatever reason, and they also don't get into California because it's all LA County. It's kind of obvious with that. Okay, but so we've got some address information, but then we also have back here our longitude and latitude. Now, what we'll be doing with this week's exercise and working through here is we're going to learn how to use the address data to make little points. We haven't done that yet with this kind of stuff. We've done longitude and latitude in past exercises, which is very useful, but we'll also get into what we call geocoding. I know, it's another word where we just put geo on the front of it, but it's what we do. But geocoding means we take just tabular address data like this and we turn it into points on the map. Okay? That's all it is. So we're going to do that as well. Now for this specific one, we're not going to do geocoding yet. Since we have longitude and latitude, we're going with that. This is always going to be way easier to utilize an existing longitude and latitude value. Okay? I'm not even going to run through and show you the geocoding here. I did it earlier, so I was playing around with this stuff and coming up with what we were going to do. And it takes a long time, and it doesn't always match up and work. Okay? I'll give some examples of this in some of the other tables that we're going to use, but to make sure that you don't all just get depressed with the amount of tedious busy work you have to do, we're not going to geocode the data here. And one issue with this stuff is that we're at the mercy of how it's reported. Okay, things like some of these have very clear addresses. All right, 37500 Oak Hill Street, Palmdale, California. You got the zip code, all of that stuff very clear. But then we also have this Arbor Place and Berwyn Road in Cerritos, okay? Like at an intersection, right? And other things are even kind of more vague still as you go through here. That's like this one. Not really helpful when we don't have any locational information. It's null, meaning there's no data for the address. Same thing for longitude and latitude. So that's another problem we face. And it's the, we're at the mercy of whoever collected the information initially and recorded this and put it into the database for the sheriff's department. Hopefully they did a good job. Isn't always the case. And that's not just, for crime data. That's anything I've ever worked with. It's a problem. People are sloppy. People don't understand the ramifications if they don't take time to do good data acquisition. So what can we do? So to keep things simple with this, we're simply going to do longitude and latitude here. All right, so let's close this. And like we've done before, I'm going to right click on this part 1 and 2 crimes. I'm going to go to display XY data. Left click on that. And so in here we have, okay, input table. It's the one I right-clicked on. Right? If I realized I made a mistake and I wanted to go to another one, I got that option, but that's good, right? Our output feature class is going to be part 1 and 2 crimes, 2021, XY table 2 point. That's kind of clunky and ugly. I'm also going to check. It's saving it in this crime.gdb. So not the Weho crime one that I had you download, but the one in my project. And I'm okay with that. I'll keep these things separate for now, kind of preserve my original data. So I'm okay with that, but I'm just going to call this one, move my notes here, all crimes. Okay, it's simpler, makes more sense. I know what I'm doing. Longitude and latitude, that's good. The only other thing I really need to change here is this coordinate system. I do not want to use WGS 1984. Instead, I'm going to select, I'm going to close this up. I want to go into geographic. That's what we're dealing with here. North America, USA and territories, and I'm going to do this plain NAD for North American datum 1983. And I'm doing this because I know I'm supposed to do this. I've checked the metadata and all that, and so just be aware of that. If you're finding tabular data, if it's giving you latitude and longitude stuff, search through the metadata, look through the website, try to figure out exactly what datum did they use to ensure beautiful accuracy when the computer puts these points up on the screen. Okay, so this is the one we want here. I'm going to hit OK and OK. And it's thinking, and it whips through here. Okay, and some of these, invalid geometry, a lot of this stuff, invalid value, it's dealing with, like we saw, where we have some null values and stuff. It's not going to be able to draw everything. But this is going to work for us, for what we're doing here. And it's just another thing. If you were doing some kind of project for, your employer, let's say you're actually working for the, LASD, and you got to analyze this stuff, you would need to think about, do I have to go in here and fix all of this stuff? How important is it? How many of these things am I losing compared to the total sample? Am I okay with that? These are questions you need to address. Because I'm just putting together a video trying to introduce you to some different tools and features and all that and techniques, we're not going to dwell on this big stuff. But just be aware. If you're doing the actual work, you got to think about that. Also, if this is for some senior project, a graduate thesis, dissertation, something like that, these are all things that need to be addressed. And when you're writing something like a thesis or some big research paper, this is part of it, is you're saying, got the data from this location, had some of these problems, here's what I did, right? Explaining, I did this and I did this because that seemed to be the best method right here, based on this study and this other thing that I read and all of that. That's a big part of doing this, whether professionally or academically or whatever. There's never really a perfect, absolutely correct way to do stuff. But what you need to be able to do is justify why you did what you did, right? And be able to argue that with your dissertation committee or with your boss or the members of the public or whatever. Okay, so there's just a little aside. But I'm going to close this. I'm cool with it. Okay, and so we have these little teardrop things for all the different crimes that took place. And let's go ahead and turn off the roads. And if I pull out here, again, this is for all of LA County. So we can see little patterns in here, see the coast and different things in here. And what we note, hopefully, is that around West Hollywood, there's a lot going on, a lot of crimes here, right? And if we go back here, let's turn this on. It is a case where it's not like this is, empty desert or forest or stuff like that. Wilshire, that's a relatively busy street compared to all this stuff up here. A lot of people, and yet we don't see the sheer, spread of crimes reported, right, in this area. Now, some different issues in here. One thing that we need to think about is jurisdiction stuff. We're dealing with LASD, data. They are the ones who actually patrol in West Hollywood, so that works. But we also have LAPD stuff, right? We have other things going on. So that's one thing we want to think about, right? Why are there these gaps in the data? Or is there a reason why we have gaps in the data? It could simply be jurisdictional. You don't have the sheriff's department handling stuff in certain areas, so they're not going to really have data, right? Maybe that's something there. But one key thing here is, we're looking at West Hollywood, so that works. It seems to be represented. Okay, but we also want to be always thinking about our actual study area itself. Okay, and making sure that we're not simply picking some arbitrary thing out in the world and just, okay, I'm going to study in this rectangle or this circle or something like that. There should be a purpose behind our study area and our boundaries in here. And I've got some links in Canvas I'll point to. It's the modifiable aerial unit problem. It's a big issue in geographic analysis and GIS. It's, what differences occur in your analysis, in your results, if we change our study area, even just a little bit, right? Or thinking about scale. If we're studying things at the state level, county level, city level, and all that, we might get totally different results. So I'll have some links and some readings on that. It's something for you to at least be aware of now. Kind of goes beyond the scope of what we're covering in this class, but it's something to be aware of, something to be thinking about. Now, West Hollywood, I would just say, based on all of the crime data that we have right here, this is pretty good. Our study area, the crime data, and all of this stuff, I'm confident with what we're doing here because it does dissipate, right? It doesn't totally vanish out here. So we have data in surrounding areas, but it is a case where it's clearly concentrated here in the city itself. So we're going to focus on what's happening inside the city. And to make life easier for us as we're going through here, to make our computer work a little less hard when it's calculating stuff and processing stuff, we're going to get rid of the crime data that we don't care about. Okay? We're going to just focus on West Hollywood. And we have a few different ways to do this. Now, the straightforward and the classic way is to go up into Analysis, go to Tools, done this before, and we're going to use the Clip tool. And it's a case of we can do clip, pairwise clip. Effectively the same thing. I think I talked about this a week or two ago, whenever that was. But with clip here, this will work. We'll just use the straight clip thing. And so it's where we're going to take our West Hollywood boundaries and just cut out those crimes within the boundaries and get rid of everything else. Okay, so and just to recall here, you've got the blue circle in the lowercase I. If you hover over that, it gives you the help on the left-hand side to help you remember what you're dealing with if you can't quite remember it. So the input features are the features to be clipped. That's the big data set, right, that you want to pare down here. So that's going to be my all crimes. Okay, clip features, that's my cookie cutter. I want West Hollywood. And what am I going to call it? All crimes clip. That works, right? We could just, we'll just do this for now. We'll see why in a second. So I'll leave that as that. I'll hit run. Hope that works. Oh, beautiful. It worked. Okay, and so we've got it here. And this is one thing that drives me crazy. It symbolizes it in the exact same manner as the original one, so you can't tell if it did anything. All right, so here, I'm just going to go into gallery. And I don't know, let's use these red circles just cuz. All right, I'm happy with that. And I'm going to drag this underneath the original one. So what we can see, if I zoom in, is at the little bottom of this upside down teardrop thing. It's in the center of the circle. So that's the actual location where it took place. But you can see here on these boundaries, okay, it gathered it when it did the clip, it kept these, but it left these off. And to be honest, I mean, come on. This is effectively, West Hollywood, even if it technically isn't, and if it's on the wrong side of the street or whatever. I'd really like to have this kind of stuff in here for my analysis, okay, as I'm going through stuff. So what I'll do is I'll pull out here, and I'm gonna grab this a different way. Okay, another thing. One thing I didn't do, because again, I don't want this to take forever. Yeah, I'm already 30 minutes in. I don't want to make this a 20-hour thing. But if I'm really studying this stuff, after I did you got the all crimes here. Initially, it's in that geographic coordinate system. A good move would have been to project it. In fact, now I'm so OCD and fixated on it. I'm going to go back and do that. Let's do this. You don't have to do it, but do it because it's easier. Okay, let's do project. And I know I've discussed this before, to where when we're doing geoprocessing, we want to have everything be in that proper projection or coordinate system, as Esri likes to refer to it. So let's do this. We'll do with the original one, the all crimes. Yeah, it's got that one. And our output system, what we'll use, like West Hollywood should have it. Nope. Wait a second. So this one, there you go. We'll use this state plane 5 in here, which is what some of the address stuff is and all of that. It's still NAT 83, so pretty close, but this will just make us feel better. In here, I'm going to hit run. That's the idea that we want to minimize the behind-the-scenes math that ArcGIS has to do and ensure that instead this is kind of already set. This little running the tool right here went through and it fixed everything so that everything will be a little bit better as we move forward. Might not even be noticeable in here, but it'll be better for what we're doing, how we're going to move forward. Okay, so we got that out of the way. In fact, let's just close this geoprocessing thing. Let's close all of this here. Okay, so nonetheless, regardless, the clip is problematic because of the nature of city boundaries and all that. So what I'm going to do instead, and I'll use my new all crimes project, is I want to left click on that, make sure I'm on here. So I want to do this select by location. Okay, we've done select by attributes before. I don't think we've done select by location. But this is where we go in to that original data set. And we say, just get me the ones that fit this criteria. Okay, and in this case, it's spatial criteria. Before we did something like, population is greater than this, or the name equals this, or something along those lines. In this case, it's a spatial relationship. So input features. So from this all crimes project, okay, with the relationship intersect, okay, and then the selecting features will be our West Hollywood here, okay, and then search distance that we've got, I'm going to put 500 feet. And I'm selecting 500 feet because that's an average Los Angeles city block, right? Which is it's 500 feet. So this is kind of saying, give me the boundaries, but also look about a block over. If we see anything there, we're going to say this is part of our group, all right? And so hopefully, if this works out well, all these things on the edge there that weren't grabbed with that clip will be brought in with this. So I'll hit apply. Beautiful. Look at that. Makes me so proud. I'll hit OK. It all worked. So you can see, right, these turquoise teardrops now are the ones that were selected, and the regular blue are outside of that search radius. But we see on the edge, it did in fact grab those that are right there. But then these other things that are, close, but not too close, we can let those go. So we got a little bit more here, and I like that better. So what we'll do is we'll now right-click on All Crimes Project, go to Data, Export Features, left-click on that. Now I'll go ahead and save it in this crime.gdb. The output name, I'm going to call it Weho Crimes. And all of this I'll leave because I already did all the selection stuff and all that. And I'll hit OK. And so here I'm going to clear my selected stuff. I'm going to turn that off. Yeah, there we go. We can still see it. It's still this damn same thing as, this one and this one there. But there, we can see we've got more crimes. It's a better representation of what we are dealing with. In fact, if I look at the attribute table here, let's see, we have about 3,600 selected. With this clip one, look at the attribute table. Okay, 3,300. So about 300 crimes were left off from using that clip function, right? Or tool. That could be huge for our analysis. And now another thing, discussing this, is we look at this. Let me go and close this. It might not look like, my wireless mouse is freaking out. Okay. It might not look like we got 300 extra things in here, and we'll get into that. How these points can be kind of problematic in how we represent data. All right, but we're not going to worry about that just yet. So to start with, let's hit save. So we've been doing stuff. I'm going to go ahead and turn off this base map. I'm going to just remove this all crimes thing. The clip, I'm also going to get rid of all crimes in general, just so we don't have too much stuff. Because I can't stand these little upside down teardrop guys. I'll find something, scary. In fact, what I can do in the search, what happens if I hit crime? Does anything come up? Yeah, nothing works for that one. Do I have to hit enter? Oh, there we go. No, see, that's just police. That's not good. All right. Get out of that. We'll just pick something like, I don't know, that's kind of scary looking. Right there. Okay, we'll do that. That works. Okay, now I'm good. Close that. And come over. Oh, come on, mouse. Here, come over and hit save. All right, so we've got our crimes for West Hollywood. Good work, team. Now, we need to figure out, okay, where are our bars at? Right? Where do we, how do we know which ones are related to these awful people who are consuming a cocktail or two? Who can we blame for this awful stuff? We gotta map our bars. Now, what we have here is simply a table. And if I open this up, we've got 24 different bars and nightclubs and all of that for the general area. Okay, and this came from me going to Google. And what we used to do in the ancient days was we'd get a phone book and go through there. Now we have Google, which is nice, but it's still kind of a pain to do this. I had to go in, I just Googled West Hollywood bars, West Hollywood nightclubs, that kind of stuff. Got the Google Maps thing that popped up and just went through one by one, checking the different entries and copying this down into an Excel table. And what I did as I was setting this up is I put the name of the bar, whatever, itself. Okay, so I had a field for that. And then I took the street field, which is simply, so you can see here, the address and the road. Okay, so I kept that as a separate field. City is a separate field. Now, it's all West Hollywood because we're dealing with one area. But I'm going to do this whether it's all in one city or if it covers a handful of cities. Maybe I'm looking at, bars in the general west side. In fact, actually, does it have, it might have, there might be one LA. Yeah, okay, there's one. One that technically is in Los Angeles in there. So you put that in and do a lot of copying and pasting, if that works. But you want to have that as a separate thing. The state, I went ahead and just did that, not too problematic. And then the zip code, you can see that changes for some of these different locations. But that's key. If you're going to do this geocoding stuff, you're making a table, okay, from whether it's Google data or some other source here. Break apart the addresses into these individual things. It's going to make it easier for the computer to do what it needs to do. Okay? So that's that. So with this, okay, and let's make sure, yeah, everything's cleared there. Okay, so we'll close this. What we're going to do is, again, called geocoding. We're going to take the address data, figure out where these things actually exist, and it's based off of this roads file right here. And we're going to look, or not even look. The computer's going to do all this. We're gonna set it up, right? But the computer's going to do the hard stuff. But in fact, let's do this. Let's click on one of these. Oh, come on, can you not get it? There we go. Oh, that's why. Hold on one second. My screen. Okay, hold on, wait a second. I'm clicking on the worst possible ones here. Yes, here we go. All right, let me bring this over here. Okay, so that was one little section of Sunset Boulevard. And it's okay. I mean, Sunset, that's a big road that runs through LA, but that was just a little chunk of it. And so one of the reasons why this whole thing is so big and why right now my mouse is freaking out because it's running, the fan is whirring. I don't know if you can hear that, but there's a lot going on because this is a huge file right here. And hopefully I realize I apologize if you're working on a laptop that's not that speedy and powerful, if this is tough. But bear with me, just try to be patient, and especially when you're clicking stuff or not clicking stuff or whatever. But in here, these are all broken into individual little sections. And we have this from right to right stuff in there. These are the addresses. That's that address range. So with our bar information, right, if something falls along Sunset Boulevard, specifically West Sunset Boulevard here, in between 8947 and 9031, and this right means on the right side of the street. So not only do we know where it is, but what side of the street is the thing on, right? If it falls within there, it's going to put the point in there. And depending on the address, like let's say it's 8989. Okay, if it's that, it's going to figure out in between 8947 and 9031 where exactly should that address be. It might not be perfectly true to reality. It's just going to divide it up into single little units and figure out where it should fit. And quite often, for what we're doing, that works just fine. Okay, but that's how this whole thing works. And if we keep scrolling down, you can see it's West Hollywood, different information in here. So this roads feature class here, this came from LA County. Okay, and it's the CAMS, it's an acronym. It's like County Address Management System. So I downloaded it from there, but it's designed to help us do this geocoding. But I'm going to show you, it's not as simple as just saying, okay, computer, tell me what's going on. We have to set some things up first before we can properly do this. Okay, so to begin the process, let's see. Oh man, okay, I'm back. No, there we go. Okay, mouse is doing okay here. So we're going to right click on this West Hollywood bars table, and I'm going to come here to where it says Geocode Table. I'm going to left click on that. Okay, and so it brings up our 6-part process. It's very interesting how they do this, but not for other things. But it's basically saying we're going on a journey. This is going to be a wonderful, magical adventure that we have. Okay, so we'll go through this. You just hit start and then next or continue or whatever it says, and I'll point out these different things, show you how to do this stuff. So I'm going to hit start. Okay, so step 1, what locator are you using? An input locator. Wait a second. We didn't make a locator, did we? No. So we're hosed. One thing we can do is we can click on ArcGIS World Geocoding Service. We can just do it this way, okay? We're not going to do it this way. This works effectively if you or the entity you're using ArcGIS Pro through, is paid up, has the subscription service, has enough credits and all of that. So this is nice and it makes stuff easy, but it costs money effectively. And depending on how you're logged in, the school's account and all that, who knows what you've got. And I try to stay away from doing this stuff because students, you might have the access at your school and it all works, but then you go to work for some place, some small little, nonprofit or private company or whatever it might be, and you don't have it. You want to be able to do this without relying on the easy way, okay? But what locator are you using? This is our only option. So this doesn't work. Let's cancel this. I forgot a step here. We got to do this, right off the bat here. So go to analysis, go to tools, and let's get rid of that. And let's do locator, create locator. Right? This is this first step. I'd say I forgot to do it. So I already created one of these when I was initially playing with it. I haven't been thinking about it, but we're doing this from scratch. So we're gonna create this one. So hit create. Okay, and this is what we're effectively doing is we're linking our roads layer right here to the this whole geocoding process and telling the computer, hey, use the roads here. This is what we want to do. Okay, that's the idea. So primary tables, we're going to select this CAMS address lines, and we could have multiple. All right, we could build off of multiple databases. We're not going to do that here. We're just going to do this. And our output locator, it gives this kind of generic thing. I'm going to leave it as is. I don't need to get a clever name. We're not going to do multiple ones. So we'll leave that. Okay, so that'll be good. English will be our thing here. Look at optional parameters. Don't need to worry about that. Okay, so wait, where's our field mapping? Oh, this is what we need to do. Field mapping, we're going to put street address. All right, and what this is saying is that with this specific feature class that we're using, right, or the table from this feature class that we're using, what's it got in it? What actually exists in here? And it's streets and the street addresses. So in doing that, it opens up this field mapping thing in here, and we've got the little asterisk next to the ones that are required, and then we have other ones in here that are not necessarily required, but you can use them if you want to. We're going to keep it pretty simple here. We'll do the required ones, maybe one or two optional ones here. So this left house number from, if we come down here, you can see we have from L, from R, to L, to R. Okay, so left house number from, it's going to be our from L. Our left house number to, it's going to be 2L. Okay, you get the pattern here. Right house number from R, and so on. Okay, and so this is, again, that right and left, it's the side of the street that you're on. You've seen this driving around, right? Okay, odds are on this side, even numbers are on that side. That's what we're telling it to look for here. Okay, and that, again, this is mandatory. So if you're going to create one of these locators from scratch, you need some kind of feature class or table that's designed for this. The Census Bureau has stuff with their Tiger files. That's a way to get things, or look for something like this for the area in which you're working, right? In this case, LA County. So we've got that. Let's go down here. Street name, of course, have to do. And that's, if we go down here, that's street name. What I'm also going to do, this is not necessary, but prefix direction can be useful in a place like LA. So that's, north, this street, west, this street. Like we saw, what was it, West Sunset or West Santa Monica, whatever we looked at before. So I'm going to select that. So it's street prefix direction. So that stands for, we'll come down a little more. I think that's all the required. But we'll do left city and right city. Yeah, so that L city L. Right city, we're going to do, come down here, city R, and I think, we can leave the other stuff. I don't think I did. Oh, I did zip code. Let me get that. So here, left zip. You can see this is just, especially for my old man eyes, this is always brutal. But the nice thing is I do it once and I don't have to do it again, right? So zip L, and then right zip, zip R. Okay, I'm good with that. And this stuff works. All right, let's run this thing. And so it's going through and it's thinking. Now I have also, so I mentioned there's the easy way is just with that, what was it, ArcGIS World Locator, whatever. That's where it goes back to Esri and it works through that, their kind of massive locator that they have. Okay? If you can do that, fantastic. In some cases, like I said, though, you might not have access to it. You're not paid up with your subscription service. It's all a way for these guys to suck as much money out of you as possible, or out of our tax dollars as possible. So there's that. If you can't do that, you can find these things and create your own locators. There's also a service through Texas A&M. I'll put the link in Canvas, but they have a service where you can just send the table, upload it to their thing, wait a little bit, you get an email saying, okay, your new table is ready to download, and it has the XY latitude and longitude stuff attached to it. So you could just do that display XY data. So I'll put the link in there. That's useful. I've done that when I'm just trying to move quickly. It's in an area where I don't have some nice convenient locator already set up. Send it, and it's free. I'm sure there's some stipulations, but it's an academic thing. If you're just goofing around and trying to figure stuff out and not doing it for major commercial purposes, it works well. Okay, so a few different ways to do this. Now you'll get some warnings in here. So it says completed with warnings. It gets into multi-part geometry, which has to do with how these different lines on the map are actually connected or not connected or whatever. We're not worried about that with this. It doesn't affect what we're doing, so we can ignore that and feel good. Okay, now if I go here back to the bars thing and I go to Geocode Table, yes, we're going to go on a journey. Very exciting. We're going to go here. Now let's see if this worked. Beautiful. We've got that CAMS, address lines, create locator thing. I'm going to select that one. That's the one I'm going to use because I made it. I want to, benefit from the fruits of my labor and all that. Okay, so about your table, it's this Weho bars one. It asks you, how is your data structured? Okay, one field or multiple. Okay, so in this case, we have more than one field. That's the whole idea, that we have The street was separate, city, state, zip code, all of these things being separate. So I'm going to keep it as more than one field. And you've got this option, don't know, open it up, you can look at it. You can explore the data. But we know, because we've already looked at it, because we're pros, it's more than one field. So I leave that there. Okay, now here, it's going to say, okay, we got you. And looking through, it seems to be that the real address, it's in this street field. City is in the city field. State is in the state field. Zip is in the zip field. And this other one is just none. We don't have it. All right, what you need to do is look through here, make sure this all looks right, that something didn't get screwed up. Maybe you have some other name that you used for whatever reason for the city, right? Or for the zip or something like that. Maybe you put code or Z code or something like that, and this couldn't figure it out. You would go in and fix that stuff here. Okay? But this all works because the table was set up to ensure that it would work. So I'm going to hit next. Okay, where would you like to save your feature class? It's trying to figure out, it's in that crime geodatabase. It's in this Weho bars thing and all that. Great. We'll leave it there. Add yes. Okay. Address, location, match. We can leave this stuff for now. You'll kind of learn as you get more experience with it if this ever matters or if it's a problem. Okay. Locations, are they limited to a specific type? Yep. They're all address. So we'll do that. And I'm going to hit finish. And so now it gives me this whole review. You can just kind of double check. This is exactly what I want. Yeah, you're good with it. Okay, go ahead and hit run. Beautiful. Okay, so this is nice. This is one of the few times where something works and it actually says, hey, it worked, and here's what happened, and gives you some real information. Okay, so we had 24 bars altogether. 23 of them matched, and that 95.83%, it's giving you the breakdown. This is really useful when you're dealing with huge tables and kind of weird numbers and you're not exactly sure, like, is that a little more than half or whatever. So that's just to kind of make it simple for us. So the majority of them matched, and we had one that tied, okay? Meaning that there are two possibilities for where it belongs, and we'll look at that. Okay, so that worked, and 0 unmatched. That's great. That means it has no clue where the thing is. And then it always gives you this average speed to kind of like show off how zippy it is or whatever. But then it says start rematch process with a question mark. We're going to say yes. Let's take a look at this tied one. So the rematch possibility, this is where you can come in and you can say, if you have some errors in here and you want to fix it, it gives you the chance to come in and just fix it right here. So we don't have to go through the process again or whatever. So these are the matched ones. I don't care about these. But this tied one, okay, we've got this. It's, the address was 370 La Cienega. It's a case of, is that, north or south? So we didn't have the actual prefix in here. And it's showing me, this is, if it's south, this is where it's at. Okay, if it's north, this is where it's at. Now, I had looked at this before, and I should be able to, I can turn this on as well underneath. And what I wound up doing is Oakwood up here, like looking at, oh, that's delightful, trashy lingerie, just north of it. Great. You gotta love West Hollywood. But looking at Google, in the original Google Maps, it was close to Oakwood Avenue, so I know that it's got to be B. It's on North Cienega, not South. So what I'll do is I leave this highlighted right there on B, and then I hit this match, little green check mark, and I say the tie is no more. I know it's this one, so let's match this one. And so I left click that, and now they're all matched. Now all 24 of my bars are in the location where they should be. So I can close this. And I'll even close the geocode and geoprocessing and all that. I'm going to close. Well, actually, I'll leave this open. So this is my Weho bars geocoded. It's a totally new feature class in here. All right, we'll change the symbology so it stands out better, but you can kind of see these little tiny points here and there. Okay, so we'll leave that as is for now and just look at this. It's got a whole host of information and some repeat stuff and all that, and it's got it broken down here. Some stuff filled in, some stuff not. And if we continue all the way over this way, we've got our, wait, that's not even there. There we go. Our name is finally way over here at the end. Okay, so we still know which one we're dealing with. Okay, but they're now located in the proper place. So let's turn this off. I'm going to change the symbology here. In the search thing, in the gallery, I think I have one for bar. Right, I'll hit enter. Yeah, beautiful. Let's do this first bar. Look how cute that is. Okay, so there are our bars. And in fact, if I zoom out a little bit, we get a sense of where, in fact, they are. All right, so we can see the bars, we can see the crimes, and we can begin our work. And I'm going to go ahead and hit save, since I've been doing stuff, and I don't want it to crash, because that could definitely happen with the amount of work we're doing. All right, and in fact, to make stuff a little easier, I'm going to get rid of those lines. They're nice for a reference, but we don't need it right now. All right, so we have our bars here. Now, what we can do is we geocoded this stuff. We know what it is. Now let's figure out, what crimes are around here. And we're going to do it like that tutorial. It was using a buffer or a block, an average block. And it was what, Pittsburgh? I think I said they used whatever a Pittsburgh block size was. So I said LA is around 500 feet. So we'll go, come on, mouse. Let's click on that. Okay, I'm going to go back to my trackpad. And we're going to do buffer. We'll just use that plain one. We don't need the pairwise one. So around my geocoded bars, I'm going to do a buffer. As I think I mentioned, I always put in the units. So 500 feet. And that's going to be our info down here. So it actually knows. So it's saying, let's draw a buffer of about a city block around the bar itself. Okay? And I'm going to hit run. Oh, and I could have done the dissolve thing. Doesn't really matter for what we're doing. Because you can see, we have a bunch of bars here. So we've got overlapping buffers or, just a few. And then you have individual ones here. It's just the one circle that we've got. But we're saying this is effectively a block around the bar. And of course, these bars are represented by points. It's not the actual building itself. It's not a perfect representation of reality, but it works for what we're doing. Okay, so we've got this. Now what we can go back and do with this thing here is I can go back to map. Let's do that select by location again. All right, and so we're going to see our input features. And we got to kind of switch this around here. We want our West Hollywood crimes. Okay, because if we go to this, okay, the selection will be applied to these features. You see that last sentence right there. So this is what we want to grab. We want to grab the crimes that exist or intersect, or within, and there are a bunch of different, I haven't showed you this, but you can hit the drop down. There are total, a lot of different options here, right, that you can pick. Intersect works for what we're doing. So where that buffer will actually intersect with the crimes themselves. Okay, and so selecting features, we'll do that. We don't need to do a search distance. I mean, we could also do a, not do this buffer part and just do a search distance thing here. But I'm going off what the tutorial did. They did this step, but I kind of like it because it gives you a visual representation of what we're actually talking about. Okay, everything else I'll leave. I'm going to hit apply and then OK. And so we can see that, some of these were selected, and you could, look to, if I see, this one is just outside, right? It's up to you to think about, should that be included or not? I think our buffers are fine. We went out and grabbed stuff. So we got that. Okay, and with this, I go to my West Hollywood crimes. Let's open up that attribute table. Let's see what we got. Okay, it's showing that, so within this area, right, remember we have that about 3,600 crimes. Over 1,000 of them are within a block or within 500 feet of a bar. All right, that's what it's saying. And so we can see those turquoise highlighted ones. Those are the ones that are in the search radius, and the other ones are outside of it. So over 1,000 that we have right here. All right, now what we can also do, actually, let me hit save. Okay, in fact, let me close this. And to make it easier, let's do this. We'll go just so we don't get lost with some of this stuff. I'm going to go right-click on the crimes feature data, go to export features. And so input features, the West Hollywood crimes, alpha location, fine. I'm going to put Weho crimes bar, and I'll hit OK. Let's change that symbology, and let's make squares for that one. So you can see that it's those same ones. I can clear the selection, and I can actually turn off the crime so we can see the ones themselves. Okay, now as I mentioned before, this whole idea of, this is 1,000 crimes, but if you look at it, it doesn't look like we have that many squares. And what you need to realize when dealing with point data in here is that sometimes the points are on top of other points. So in this case, that one I clicked on, West Hollywood, West Hollywood, West Hollywood, that's 3 separate incidents in that area. There's one of these. Is it this one? Now you can see, just keep going down. There are a lot of crimes that go on in this specific area, in that part of the world, right here. Right, so that's something to be aware of when we're studying that. They're just simply visual representation isn't going to be enough. There's more going on than our eye can see presently. Okay? So something to think about. And this was the tutorial. Was just kind of looking at that and trying to show that, like, a bunch of these crimes that took place in this one area, they were close to these bars, and it was really easy with the way they had it set up to, you just like visually looked at it, and that's tutorial data. It's the thing where they dumb it down so much so that it's really easy for you to click on this and click on that. So you're in a classroom and you're clicking on this stuff, and the instructor that's in the classroom is happy because everything's working just fine, and it's easy for everybody. We feel good. We figured something out. We tell our parents when we get home, or significant other or whatever, like, oh, I made a map and I found out, this bars and crimes, and great. But the problem is we get out into the real world and we have to do this stuff, and we can't do it unless we just happen to be working in, say, like Pittsburgh, in this exact area, in this exact moment in time. That's never the case, right? So if you learn that tutorial stuff, you went on and got a job, and you're working, for the sheriff's department, and you're trying to see, like, what's going on with West Hollywood, how would you go about doing this stuff, right? So we did the geocoding, created the address locator, so you know how to do that. And the crime data, that's just from the sheriff's website. So you can download that stuff there if you didn't have access to that. I explained, find the bars. We made a table of all these different bars and clubs and stuff in the area. So that's how we did that. But still, we look at this, I don't know. Like, if we're looking at it, could you tell which bar we'd really want to target if we're convinced that bars are the problem? and all of that, that this is where crime is occurring, I don't know. You might be able to eyeball it, you might not. I'm thinking you can't with what we see here. All right, so let's take it a step further. I don't know if I've saved lately. Let's save. Okay, we're going to go into analysis, and we'll go into tools, and let's do near. So the near tool is nice, or we can have it calculate and figure out which bar these different points, these different crimes are closest to, right? So if we have like this mass right here, bunch of bars, bunch of different crimes, we can figure out, well, which bar is really closest to the majority of the criminal activity, right? And then we can focus on that one. The one that comes back that has the biggest number, we'll say, okay, that's the one we're going to go raid and shut down. How dare these people have a good time, or whatever is going on. And I'll also say, too, I haven't gone in here and even looked at the different types of crimes. And it's a case where with some of these, let's click on this, this is where that, the time is going to be useful, right? So something happened at about 12:30 a.m., stuff happened around midnight. Yeah, I could see that being connected to a bar, right? But if it's, it's the middle of the day, can we blame the bar for that? Or, that's the kind of stuff we'd want to get into. We'd want to really take our time, go through here and get a sense of, okay, what crimes are really relevant to our study and which aren't, right? So we'd want to look at that kind of stuff. But we're not going to do it. I ain't got time for that. So instead, we'll just take all of these crimes. We'll just assume they're all connected to these bars right here, and we'll do the near tool. So I'll click on that. Okay, on this pending edits, let me go ahead and hit save edits. And that's probably from our geoprocessing. That's what was going on. We'll save that. If yours says that, just hit save, and that'll make sure that everything is okay to run and won't give us error messages, hopefully. Okay, so input features, and let's do this thing right here. Oh, well, that doesn't help. Well, the idea is this is going to be our crimes, okay? And near features, let's see if this explains it a little better. Yeah, not necessarily, not much help, but this will be the bars themselves. Okay, so input features is that Weho crimes bar. Near features is going to be our West Hollywood bars. Geocoded, okay, search radius we're not going to worry about. We kind of did some of that stuff here. Planar refers to, we have different things. In fact, let me see if they give you a good, hold on. There you go. Yeah, so this, yeah, okay, exactly. So planar is just kind of like, as the crow flies, it just treats it as this flat surface, okay? Or yeah, like right here, it says geospheroid for geodesic or flat earth planar model. If it were a case where we're dealing with stuff over, a hemisphere, the curvature of the earth, yeah, that can be useful to take into account. We're dealing with West Hollywood, so we don't need to worry about that. So we can leave that there. With a lot of these, we can just leave them as is. And what it's going to do is it's going to stitch on these new fields for our crimes thing. This feature ID, near FID, and then the distance. Okay, and so that feature ID, that's going to be important in figuring out what bar we're talking about. So let me hit run. Okay, boom, it did it. And so let's just right click, open up the attribute table here for our West Hollywood crimes bar. And if I scroll over, I've got the near feature ID, okay, and then the near distance itself. And that distance is going to be whatever the map units are, the projection stuff, coordinate system that we're using. So if you're ever confused, you can, that's where that's coming from. But it's saying that with these, like this one, 16, it's saying this crime took place closest to, or the closest bar to this crime, so we would say it, is feature ID 16. All right, so if we go back here to the bars and open up the attribute table, okay, this object ID, that's it right there. So 16, it would be this bar right there. Come on, mouse. And unfortunately, it's kind of clunky. We'd have to go here. Mother load. That's where that one was closest to. Okay, so now we know all these crimes, these 1,000+ crimes that we're dealing with, we know which bars they're closest to and what we can do right here. I mean, you can do sort ascending. If I just right click on where it said near FID, and that'll list this stuff. As you know, this is all that first bar, feature ID or object ID, the second, and so on. But you can't really tell, which one has more. That's kind of clunky. There are different ways we can do statistics, summarize. What I'm going to do is hit this summarize. Okay, and so for statistics field, I'm going to come down here to this near FID. And statistic type, I want to do unique. So what I want to say is, okay, computer, go in here, look through this near FID thing, and give me back a report that tells me, the different unique or different times in which this specific FID popped up effectively. Let me hit OK, and hopefully it'll make more sense. So I hit OK. Now we have down here, it's another thing where it doesn't necessarily tell you everything is great, but you can see in the contents pane, this Weho crimes bar statistics. Let me open that up. Okay, and it's showing me in here these different things that we got. Okay, throughout here. And what we could do, let's do frequency. Let's do sort descending. So we've got 13 and 3. These two are pretty bad compared to the other ones. We could even do the top 5. Really, these 4 seem to be problematic. But 13, if we go here, in fact, what we could do, let's do this. Let's go to labeling properties. And we're not going to do that. Let's just do it based on the ID. Okay, and then let's actually label them. There we go. Okay, oh, so look at that. Perfect. All right, so we go back. Sorry, I'm making this up as I go. That's why I'm getting excited and talking to myself. Sorry if it's a little confusing here. In fact, let me go into, don't stress. If I'm going fast here, this isn't something you necessarily need to do, but I want to show you how we're doing it. Let's make this bigger and bolder. Okay. So what did we say here in our statistics? It's 13. Oh, it's 13 and 3. So 3, this one's a problem right here. Let's see what bar is this. The Abbey food and bar. Don't go there. You're going to get stabbed. And then where is, okay, let's look here. Oh, here's 13. Up here. That one's trouble. Okay, which, Trunks. Oh, poor Trunks. Trunks has been around for a while. I remember seeing that from the road back when I was a college student. Okay, so they got problems out there too. So 2 dangerous bars. And what we could say is, oh my goodness, stay away from these places. In fact, let's shut it down. Let's get the cops out here and patrol and all that stuff. Okay? That's effectively what like this tutorial was doing. So what we could do, okay, let me just close this. What I could do is just say, hey guys, I want to see, these problematic bars in West Hollywood. Give me a map that shows the most dangerous, deadly ones and a report out, and we'll send the cops there and increase patrols. We'll shut them down or whatever. I could do that. You could do that. I don't know if that's fair. We don't know that there is an actual correlation, right? Number one. In fact, that's a key thing here. Okay? One big lesson we have is that correlation does not equal causation. Meaning that just because you see two things in a proximity to one another, it doesn't mean one caused the other, right? In fact, who knows? Maybe we could even argue that no, it's the crimes themselves cause people to open up bars. I don't know. I mean, it's the same kind of logic. We don't know, in this case, that the bars are responsible for the crimes themselves. And that's where we would say get into. If we really were convinced that this was the case, we'd get into when did these incidents take place? Was the bar open at that point in time? Is it, what kind of crime was it? Is it something that's connected to, like if it's tax fraud, it's not necessarily connected to the bar unless it's from the bar itself. So we'd want to get into types of crimes, times the incidents, and all that to begin to do that. But I thought just for kicks, what we could do here, we've got this. Let's hit save. But what I also did was I gave you churches and daycare centers in West Hollywood as well, just to kind of prove a point. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to right click. Let's do daycare. Right click here, and I'm going to go to Geocode Table. Okay, and yes, we're going to start a journey. It's going to be wonderful. Input locator, one I made. Thank you very much. I'm going to hit next. All this is going to be the same as the other one, and I didn't show you, but it's the exact same table structure. I created it in the exact same way, going into Google, making this stuff. So I'm just going to hit next because we know all this stuff is going to work. Yes, it's address. Finish. Run that mother. Look. Oh, unmatched. Mother of pearl. Yeah, what happened here? Okay, let's do this. Yeah, we're going to start the rematch process. Did I skip something? Well, that's not helpful. Let's do this. Let's remove. And of course, this all worked. Tell you what, and what I'm going to do, and this you might need to do, and this is actually, this is why I had this error take place. This was all planned. This isn't me screwing up. Wink. One thing, if you do get weird stuff like this, and it might have been, I failed as I was clicking through stuff, but what helps is close everything down. Okay, just shut it down. Make sure you're saved and all that. But then I'm going to open this up one more time, and I'm going to go back in here. Okay, seems to be an issue with ArcGIS Pro that the original desktop version didn't. This wasn't really an issue with desktop, but the Pro version seems to have this, where stuff starts to get weird. Shut it all down, open it back up. Also, make sure that if you'll have in here, it'll say update, available or whatever. Make sure you update the software. That also seems to be a real problem. So if you see updates available, don't ignore it. Do it, because that can save you some headaches. So I'm going to open up Crime. Okay, and let's try this one more time. Actually, let me make sure, just to be clear. Let's open this up and make sure there wasn't. Oh, interesting. Aha! So something got corrupted in here. So it's not the original daycare thing. Okay, let's do this. That's why. So the churches one works. Okay, but daycare is screwed up in this. By the time you see this video, you're downloading data from Canvas, I will have fixed that. So daycare will look like this church's one. This is what it should look like. So something got crossed. You can see we've got some crime stuff in here. I don't know what the heck I did to make that happen, but c'est la vie. We'll close that for now. In fact, let me write myself a note. So I fix that. Fix daycare. Table. All right. See, this is why we use the tutorial data, because it's already been tested and it already works, and we don't look like morons when we do this stuff. Yeah, I should do that, but I can't do it. I cannot do it to you. So, but luckily this church's one, this works. So let's go in here, right click, Geocode Table, do the church's one, hit start, same process. Okay, yep, address, finish, run. Ten matched. Yeah, that's what it's supposed to look like. Heck yeah. All right, so no on the rematch process in here. Okay, same kind of deal. We could do, in fact, let's turn off our bar crimes. Let's turn off our bars. We've got the churches. I don't think we have, at least not default. You can open up some other styles. I don't think we have a church thing. We have, oh, is that looks like Disneyland, place of worship. Okay, well, all right, that looks like the Magic Kingdom to me, but all right, we'll go with it. All right, we'll close that. All right, let's close all this stuff just to kind of get rid of some of these things so we can look at our actual map. Close that. Okay, and we'll turn on our original West Hollywood crimes. Now you can see I grabbed some. I clearly kind of went outside of West Hollywood, but it's fine for what we're doing. What we'll do here, same thing. Select by location. We're not going to do a buffer this time. We'll simply do that. So input features. We'll do our West Hollywood crimes that intersect. Yeah, we can do that. West Hollywood churches, search distance. So this, let me get this up here. You can have, I don't think, is this? Yeah, we don't have to worry about that. But it's just saying like, you figure out some kind of search radius, same kind of buffer deal. So 500 feet, let's just hit apply, see if that works. Gorgeous, right? So we can see around these churches, it selected stuff. These, it's not in West Hollywood. It didn't grab anything. It's not going to affect anything there, right? But if I right click here and I go to attribute table, okay, now it's just 208 crimes, so less than we see around the barn. But it's a case where you can't say that crimes and churches aren't connected in some way. I mean, if we're saying that bars and crimes and being in the same place are connected in some way, you kind of have to say it. Same thing with the daycare. I want you to go ahead and make sure you when I get the new daycare table in there, I also want you to map in the daycare facilities. Do the same geocoding process. So I'm not going to walk you through it here, but you've seen this. You should be able to do it. If you can do this other stuff, you can do that. But do yourself a favor. Do the same process. See what's going on there. I forget the number when I initially ran it, but it was more than the churches, less than the bars. But it's a thing. Like, is this, are 3-year-olds out there stabbing people? I don't know, maybe. But you can see, hopefully, the absurdity with some of this, or it's overly simplistic when we do this, where we simply say, okay, a bar is a bad location, because people drink there. That leads to crime of all kinds, and so therefore crime and this thing, it's connected. We can never do that. Geography is too complicated. Humans are too complicated. Society is too complicated. It's never as simple as this thing leads to this thing in this kind of way, in what we're dealing with here, right? So that's just something I want you to be aware of, that we don't want to have this overly simple cursory analysis. Now, another thing that we're going to do here, close that. And in fact, I'm going to clear the selection here. Okay, I'm going to turn off, and you can see we've got a lot of stuff in here just showing up. Let me make sure we're going to keep, let's see, we'll turn that back on. Let me hide that. And yeah, we'll turn off our buffer. We'll leave West Hollywood there. Okay. One thing that might be easier, and we actually did this last time, is instead of looking at all the point data, let's look at a density surface. Let's have the computer figure out, create a raster to show us where this stuff is concentrated. Little pockets of high crime activity, and then by default areas where there's not a lot of it, right? Compared to the high crime areas. So let's go up here to Analysis, Tools, okay, and there are different types of density. We're gonna do kernel density. You can get into the why you do some of these, versus other ones later on when you take the intermediate and advanced GIS classes and spatial analysis classes and all that. We'll just use this one here. You get into how these things work. But what we're going to do is we're going to take, in this case, our point features. So let's just look at all of our West Hollywood crimes. And I made sure to clear my selection, get rid of the little turquoise highlighted ones, so that we're looking at all of them, right? Just kind of generally speaking, covering all of this stuff. Now, population field, when I had you do this before, I had gone in and I had given a weight thing. I picked, scarier crimes, giving them a higher weight, more violent things, stuff like that. Things that have, were less aggressive or whatever, we gave a lower weight, and we used that. I haven't done that here. We're just going to say none, and we're going to treat it as we're just interested in crimes in general, okay? In this case, where are they taking place in this area? This is what it's going to be called. I'm just going to leave it at that, but you might want to, change it to, Weho crime density or something like that. If you're really doing this analysis, I'll leave it here. All of this kind of, output stuff, I'm going to leave that as is. Let's hit run. Hopefully that works. Beautiful. All right. And we have, let me come over here. It's hidden. Let's turn off our West Hollywood. In fact, to make it a little easier, to see, let me drag our city boundaries underneath it. I'm going to turn off the crimes themselves. In fact, let's turn off everything. Hold on, let me switch to that. And so we can see in here, let's get a little closer. We've got this hotspot right here. We've got this other one right over here. Okay, so two key areas. Now we did have, some bars over there. Let me turn off these labels. Okay, we got our bars there. And if we look at our churches, we have some churches by some bars and stuff like that. But for the most part, we don't have a lot of churches in this area. We can turn on, in fact, just to make it easier, let's turn on this world street map. If I turn this off, we can see we got along Santa Monica here. But if you look, right, we see it kind of more or less is around Santa Monica Boulevard here. We've got some stuff up here by Sunset. That's where we're seeing some of the activity. Okay, it's in these general areas. One thing, though, that I think is interesting, if we turn this sheriff station back on, yeah, there we go. Look at that. It's right in this area where we have this high density. Okay, so the sheriffs themselves are here. A lot of the crimes that are reported are right here in this general area. Okay, and so you can see what's kind of nice here and useful with this stuff is clearly you can see how these things kind of are in this grid pattern, and so that gets into intersections and stuff and how the things are actually reported and all that. I mean, that could skew some of our stuff. But we do the density, and it really helps us visualize where the things are taking place. Okay? It's in this area right here. So yes, we have a good number of bars over here. We have a good number of crimes over here. But this is also where the sheriff's station is. It's not unreasonable to think that perhaps a reason why we see more crimes reported in this area is because we have more sheriff's deputies in this area, right? More cars driving around in this specific area. And so we have more things reported. Now, I don't know if that's the case. I haven't fully done the analysis. I don't know what goes into all this stuff. I'm not a crime geographer. This isn't my wheelhouse that I normally work in. So I can't tell you all of the behind the scenes, how the data are collected, what goes into the stuff. But that to me is a big red flag. Right? And so I'm not saying, I'm going to make this clear, I'm not saying that therefore crime data it sucks and we shouldn't use it or shouldn't trust it or whatever. But what I am saying is that we should really question how we get it. And that's the key thing with all of this stuff. So yeah, we did some geoprocessing. We can do cool things. And like I said, honestly, I could have simply said, let's figure out which bars are the problem, what we need to look at, check at, deal with in this regard, right? And you could have given me a great map and we'd say, okay, it's these two bars, they're the troublemakers. We could do that. It could look official. We could shape policy on that. I mean, we could really change how Sheriff's Department resources are utilized, how funds are spent, and all of that through some kind of analysis like this, right? There's a lot of power in maps here, especially when you're working within local government agencies. I mean, I've been there. I've worked in this arena, not with crime stuff, but other local government stuff. And you can see how powerful your maps are, where you do the analysis, you create the map, and your bosses, different directors and deputy directors and supervisors and all that are going to look at this stuff and go, okay, well, it's clear. We're going to spend money here, not spend money here, that kind of stuff. So it's very easy to do that. But what I want you to take from this is to think about, should we trust the data? All right? If nothing else, the whole COVID-19 pandemic should have shown you, and if not, let me make this be the big wake-up call here. But it's a case where this really should have let you know that data collection, it's not always great when we're dealing with the government and some of these big data sets and all of that stuff. I mean, there are issues galore. You can Google, I haven't talked about it with you guys in this class, but Google what Florida did to their GIS person at the start of the pandemic. That's a whole issue. You could look into the CDC and how they, have handled this, changed some things, what we do in terms of, documenting things like COVID deaths, what's an actual COVID death, which isn't. That can change analysis. That can do a lot of different stuff. So, if it is in fact the case that we have more crimes reported in this area because we have a heavier police presence in this area and stuff is caught and actually reported and observed and all of that, that's an issue. That could screw up our whole spatial analysis. If we do the research and we look in here and we say, no, actually, this is simply a coincidence. This is where crimes are happening. We have no difference between the presence here and the stuff out in these other places where we don't see anything, right? It's all totally connected then. Okay, right? Another case could be a preconceived notion that these bars are trouble. And maybe that is, the case. Maybe you do have issues with, different assaults and different types of theft and things like that occurring near these bars. Maybe that's the thing, but maybe because of that, the resources are focused here. So we have a higher rate because that's where we're looking, right? And there are other crimes taking place in these other locations, but nobody really cares. Nobody pays attention to it because we're not looking there. It seems fine. Nobody's complaining or whatever. Um, yeah, something to think about. And it also gets into, we're not going to look into this, but I can't not mention it, but discussions of crime rates in different ethnic and racially segregated neighborhoods. We got to question that, right? Question the data. Why do we have the data that we have? Why do we see the patterns that we see? Is it inherently this group of people more prone to crime? Or is it a case of our, just society in general contributes to that, some more systemic reason for this? Or, this is the thing that I don't think gets enough attention, is something we should really focus on, are our data methods, our acquisition methods, how we're getting the data, is that skewed? So we think we're being scientific and methodical. We go in there and what we're actually doing is we're perpetuating these stereotypes, biases, skewing data. That's what we always want to question. Okay, that's the key thing. So look, like I said, I warned you about this. It's not going to be a pretty map in here necessarily. We don't have some nice, report that you can give me. But what I would like you to do is give me a map that shows this density of crimes here. In fact, let me turn that off. And what I would say, let's do this. Show me West Hollywood. Show me the density. Show me these different things. The bars, places of worship / all I see is Disneyland. But and you don't have to symbolize it this way. Use any of this stuff. Do what works for you. Also put that daycare stuff in there. And let's go ahead and put in the roads. You can experiment with labeling, but it might be a little too much. So if it's too ugly, you don't have to have these labels in there. If you're looking for a bit of a challenge here, you can get into labeling properties, so you're aware. And with the whole position idea, getting into placement in here, like regular placement versus street placement. And then you've got some different options. You can check boxes, and see things are changing in here. Maybe it's better, maybe not. You can get into these different things. So you don't have to do this. You don't have to have every single thing labeled in here, but at the very least, have these lines on here just to give us some reference. Okay, but give me a map. Give me a layout, and it'd be a landscape thing to go with the shape of West Hollywood. Okay, map the, put the boundaries, put the this roads, cams, address lines thing on here. Bars, sheriff's station, places of worship, daycare, and then your crime buffer. Okay, give me a little title, explain what's going on, a snappy title in your own words. Put in a legend so I know exactly what I'm looking at. Okay, make a nice, attractive layout, and that'll at least show me that you've gone through this, you've successfully geocoded, you've done some of these things. Save it or export it as a PDF, upload that to Canvas, and we're good. And then next week, I don't know what we're going to do next week. I'm changing stuff. I'm making it up as I go. But next week, I'll try to give us another one of these nice things like we did the week before, or we can have some end product that really gets us an answer, right? Something a little more linear in thought and not questioning methods and all this stuff. But it's important. That's why I bring it up. You should know this because a good GIS professional is going to ask these questions. Going to question this stuff. And what's really horrible is when you're working in GIS, when you make a map, and somebody asks you a question about your study area, about that modifiable aerial unit problem, right? Or they ask, well, you did this stuff, but what's the density of the crimes? Or where's the sheriff's station? Or how are the data collected? Or they ask you some of these questions I've been bringing up. If you don't have an answer, it's awful. It's embarrassing. It's terrifying. You realize you don't know what you're doing. You just kind of did some stuff that seemed to work. You want to be asking these questions. You want to make sure before you turn in some map, some report, something to your boss, supervisor, whoever you're dealing with, as well as to the public, that you've asked these questions, you've anticipated them, so that if somebody does ask you, you have that answer, right? You can say, don't worry, I thought about that. That's why you can trust my map, you can trust my work, because I am a GIS professional. Okay. All right, geographers, that's more than enough for this week. So have at it. Best of luck, and I'll talk to you when I talk to you.